For tens of thousands of years, long before outsiders ever set foot on the island, the indigenous peoples of New Guinea lived in one of the most culturally rich and ecologically diverse places on Earth. Highland communities built intricate stone terraces and irrigation systems. Coastal people carved world-famous wooden art, navigated vast trade routes, and passed down stories of ancestors whose spirits lived in the land itself. This was a world of hundreds of languages, complex religious traditions, and deep ties to place. But that world began to change in the 19th and 20th centuries, when European colonial powers began to carve up the world for their self-serving trade interests. While the Germans and English laid claim to the eastern half of the island, what is today the independent nation of Papua New Guinea, Dutch colonial rule slowly crept into the western half. Compared to other colonies, the Dutch presence here was small, but it was not insignificant. Mission schools introduced reading and writing, administrators attempted to reshape local politics, and a colonial hierarchy emerged before the Imperial Japanese military occupied the north coast of the island during World War II. When the war finally ended, the Dutch returned and began preparing the region for independence. A new educated Papuan generation emerged, teachers, pastors, soldiers and leaders who believed they were on the path to forming a nation of their own, one that would remain closely tied to Dutch economic interests. In 1961, indigenous Papuans declared their independence and raised their national symbol for the first time, the Morning Star flag. For many, this was the start of their identity as a modern nation. But the Cold War had other plans. Indonesia, newly independent and determined to claim all former Dutch territories, insisted that Western New Guinea, what it called West Irian, belonged to it. And in Washington, the US was worried Indonesia might drift toward the Soviet Union if the issue wasn't resolved in its favor. So, in 1962, without any Papuans at the table, world powers signed the New York Agreement, forcing the Dutch to leave. Control passed briefly to the United Nations, and then to Indonesia, with one promise: Papuans would later be allowed to choose their own political future. That vote happened in 1969, but not in the way the agreement intended. Instead of a democratic referendum, Indonesia selected 1,026 Papuans, less than 1% of the population, and had them vote under heavy pressure. Unsurprisingly, they voted unanimously to join Indonesia. Many Papuans call it the act of no choice, and it remains one of the most painful and defining moments in their history. After the vote, everything changed quickly. Indonesia launched massive development and resource extraction projects, including the Grasberg mine, one of the largest gold and copper mines on Earth. Through the transmigration program, hundreds of thousands of Indonesians from other islands were resettled into coastal Papua. Cities that had once been majority Papuan became dominated by newcomers with different languages and cultures. Many indigenous Papuans were driven into the highlands. For many indigenous communities, this wasn't just demographic change, it was calculated displacement on a massive scale. Over the following decades, tensions between Papuan independence groups and the Indonesian state grew. Military operations and crackdowns on dissent created a climate of fear, causing armed resistance groups to form. Human rights organizations documented killings, forced relocations, and suppression of Papuan culture by the Indonesian military. Some activists and observers describe these patterns as ethnic cleansing, pointing to violence, population replacement, and long-term efforts to assimilate Papuans into the Indonesian state. Indonesia denies these claims, arguing that its actions are aimed at combating separatism and promoting unity and development. Yet through all of this, indigenous Papuans have shown extraordinary resilience. New generations of Papuan creators and leaders are raising their voices online, in cities, and across the world. Today, the story of Western New Guinea is still unfolding. It's a story shaped by ancient cultures, colonial era decisions, Cold War politics, and modern struggles over land, identity, and political rights. And it raises questions that still hang over the region. What does self-determination mean for a people whose past was decided by others? Why do we care about the destruction of one culture and not another? Like and subscribe for more stories that should be famous.